On the beautiful island of Sodier, where trains rumbled cheerfully through green fields and gentle hills, Thomas, the small blue engine with a bold number 1, carried a simple dream: to be the best, fastest, and most useful engine on the whole railway. That morning, the sky was clear and blue like a promise. The engines gathered at the main station to discuss the day's routes. A lively conversation broke out when Annan, a fast but sometimes reckless engine, suggested taking a shortcut. "If we turn left at the old junction, we'll reach the factory before noon," Annan said brightly. But the others hesitated. That path was narrow, rarely used, and not part of the official schedule. "That's not a valid route," one engine pointed out. Thomas stayed quiet, though curiosity flickered in his heart. Inside him, another thought sparked: a race, a challenge, and a name: Hongmei. The bright red engine from China was famous for her speed and calm confidence. "If I can prove I'm faster than her," Thomas thought, "they'll finally see I'm truly engine number 1. Fueled by this thought, Thomas headed to the platform, determination bubbling in his boiler. "Today," he told himself, "I'll be the fastest engine on all of Sodier." As daylight warmed the tracks, Thomas raced across familiar stretches, gliding past fields and hills like a streak of blue lightning. But as he neared the old junction Annan had mentioned, he hesitated. The pressure to prove himself was too strong. He turned. Annan followed, cheering behind him. "We'll get there early for sure." But only minutes later, the ground shuddered. Thomas slid off the track. There he lay, tilted among the bushes, wheels stuck between rocks, his body scratched and battered. Annan looked at him, guilt heavy in his voice. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have pushed the shortcut." Thomas gave a weak smile, his eyes fixed on the sky above. "No. I made the choice. I wanted to win. To be recognized. But now, I just want to be rescued." The rescue team arrived shortly after, and with a bit of teamwork, some grunts and hisses of steam, Thomas was gently lifted back onto the rails. His frame was dented, paint scratched, but his spirit still stubbornly intact. Later that day, Hongmei found Thomas resting near the repair shed, a tarp draped over his engine, like a gentle reminder to slow down. She didn't tease him. Instead, she offered a quiet smile. "You don't need to be the fastest," she said, her voice soft. "You're already one of the best." Thomas looked at her, surprised. "But I was trying to prove that, to everyone." "And what did that prove to you?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "That shortcuts aren't always the best way forward. And maybe, winning isn't everything." Hongmei nodded. "Being reliable. Being kind. Being brave. Those are the engines everyone remembers." They both smiled, and for the first time that day, Thomas didn't feel like he had something to prove. Not long after, Thomas crossed paths with Rosie. She was waiting at the junction, her cheeks puffed, clearly annoyed. "I've been waiting for you all day," she huffed. "You ignored my signals, and didn't show up to help at the station." Thomas hesitated. He remembered, he'd been so focused on racing that he'd forgotten his promise to assist Rosie that morning. "I'm really sorry," he said quietly. "I was caught up in proving something silly." Rosie blinked. Then, slowly, she softened. "You mean, you forgot me because you wanted to race?" Thomas winced. "Not exactly. I mean, yes. But I know I messed up." She paused, then chuckled. "Well, as long as you admit it." And then she added with a smirk, "I still would have beaten you in a race." They both laughed, and as they rolled side by side down the tracks, a cheerful rhyme played on the radio nearby, singing about the importance of friendship, patience, and knowing when to say sorry. Thomas hummed along quietly. But the day wasn't done teaching lessons yet. That afternoon, the station master called Thomas over. "There's been confusion at the main terminal. Delays, miscommunication. You were supposed to help manage arrivals. Thomas frowned. I thought I had the afternoon off. No, that was tomorrow, the station master replied kindly. And your confusion caused some chaos. Thomas looked down. Or, would have, if engines could. I'll do better, he promised. I let too many things distract me. As Thomas headed to the terminal, determined to fix what he could, he misjudged a switch and, clang, his wheels jolted off the track again. Not again, Thomas groaned. But before panic could settle in, a familiar voice called out. Need a hoof. Thomas turned to see Rajiv rolling in, shiny and calm. I messed up again, Thomas said sheepishly. Could use a little help. Rajiv smiled. We all derail sometimes. Doesn't mean you're not a great engine. With Rajiv's help, and a little unexpected assistance from a curious elephant nearby, yes, an actual elephant that gently nudged Thomas's buffer with its trunk, they got him back on track. Thomas couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect that kind of rescue. Later, as the sun dipped below the hills, Thomas waited for Rajiv outside a film set. He was curious. Rajiv had been cast in a scene for a movie being filmed on Sodier, and Thomas had agreed to help behind the scenes. He watched quietly as Rajiv posed, moved, acted out scenes. But suddenly, something looked wrong. Smoke started to billow from the studio, and Rajiv seemed trapped inside. Thomas panicked. Without thinking, he rushed in. Rajiv. Are you okay? A moment of silence. Then laughter. The smoke was artificial. The scene had just ended. Rajiv rolled out, chuckling. Thomas, that was just part of the movie. Thomas blushed, gears whirring awkwardly. But, Rajiv added, smiling warmly, you ran in anyway. That was brave. You are a hero, even when you don't have to be. That night, under the quiet starlight, Thomas rolled slowly along the tracks. The wind was cool, and the island peaceful. He had made mistakes. Gotten off track, literally and figuratively. But he had also apologized, learned, made amends, and helped friends. He may not have been the fastest. But maybe, just maybe. He was exactly the kind of engine Sodier needed. The next morning, a light fog drifted over Sodier. The sun struggled to push through the gray, and the tracks were slick with dew. Thomas sat quietly near the yards, steam rising gently from his funnel as he watched the island slowly come to life. Despite the peaceful start, something felt unsettled in his engine. Not a mechanical issue, something deeper. A doubt. A question. What did it really mean to be engine number one? He had spent so long chasing that title, racing against time, comparing himself to others, hoping applause and admiration would fill the uncertainty. But now, after the chaos, the crashes, and the humbling moments, Thomas wasn't sure anymore. As if on cue, Rosie rolled up beside him. You're quiet today, she said gently. Thomas exhaled, the steam trailing off into the mist. Do you ever wonder if you're doing enough? Rosie tilted her smokebox. You mean, like, being useful? Thomas shook slightly. Being good enough. Being what everyone expects you to be. Rosie thought for a moment. You know, I used to think I had to act a certain way. Always smiling, always being cheerful, even when I wasn't feeling it. But then I realized. I'm most useful when I'm honest. With others, and with myself. Thomas turned toward her. But what if you don't like what you find when you're honest? Rosie smiled softly. Then you grow. Bit by bit. Steam by steam. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but full of understanding. Later that day, a special assignment was announced. The mayor of Sodier was visiting, and the engines were asked to help with a special Unity Parade, a celebration of teamwork, cultures, and the many friends who had come from all over the world to work on the island. Thomas felt his firebox flicker with nervousness. Me? In a parade? After everything? But Sir Topham Hatt smiled. There's no better engine for the job. You've been through a lot, Thomas. And you kept learning. That's what makes you special. With Rajiv leading a musical float, Rosie carrying flowers from the mountain fields, and Hongmei bringing traditional lanterns from her last trip abroad, the parade was a colorful, joyful sight. And in the middle of it all was Thomas, with a banner across his side that read, Kindness. Courage. Number 1. As they rolled through the cheering crowds, Thomas spotted children waving little flags with his number on them. One boy leaned over the platform, shouting, "That's Thomas. He helped the movie train." Thomas couldn't help but beam. But the biggest surprise came halfway through the parade, when a small engine with bright purple paint rolled up beside him. It was a newer engine, nervous, shy, and unsure. Thomas greeted her warmly. "First parade?" She nodded quickly. "I don't know if I belong here." Thomas smiled. "Neither did I, once. But turns out, sometimes the track you're meant to take isn't always the one you expect." He slowed down just a little, letting her roll beside him. That evening, as the parade ended and the sky turned gold, the engines gathered by the old windmill for a picnic-style rest. Laughter echoed. Stories were shared. Steam puffed into the air like dancing clouds. Thomas looked around, at his friends, at the faces smiling back at him, at the tracks that stretched out like veins across the island, and felt something settle in his heart. Being number 1 wasn't about being the fastest. It wasn't about being the strongest, or the most admired. It was about showing up. About helping when you could, learning when you failed, and lifting others along the way. It was about being part of something bigger. That night, Thomas rolled into Tidmouth Sheds, his paint still a bit scratched, his wheels a little dusty, but his spirit brighter than ever. As he drifted off to sleep under the moonlight, the other engines resting around him, a single thought hummed in his cab. I may not be perfect. But I'm proud of who I'm becoming. And somewhere in the quiet, the island of Sodier seemed to whisper back. So are we.